Hello and welcome to the first ever episode of Hidden Gems. I'm your host and sometimes referee, and today we're joined by our distinguished guest, he who is of Jupiter Supreme, a one Jupiter exile.
Hey, thank you for having me. Glad to be back.
Okay, now, as if the title didn't already imply it, the primary reason that we are, or I am doing a channel like this with a, video like this is because we all know the state of gaming preservation is practically non-existent. Even if you have discs can get rot. Even if you have cartridges, batteries can die, or materials can degrade over time to where, they may become dust-like or extremely oxidized. Google it. I promise you it's not good for a lot of technology. So even though emulation has been frowned upon in many circles of the corporate level, it serves a very important purpose, because as it stands right now, the majority of companies that have created deadware, aka software or software patents and licenses and trademarks that are no longer valued or have a direct corresponding owner and are not being protected, don't have any form of preservation. That also applies to a lot of the big corporations. Some of them lose their data, or they don't deem a game as financially viable to have a reason to remaster it or even port it. So you're left with very few options. Also, we all know scalpers love to find collectibles and spike up prices. That's just how things are. And sometimes it's just a tradable collectible, and someone wants to either grow it or shrink theirs based on whatever reasoning they have in life. So this show's primary job is to just point you in the direction of things you may not have known about, or extremely old retro gems that never got the chance to truly shine that they deserve for whatever reason. Now, with that being said, Mr. Exile, what have you chosen for us today?
Well, thankfully, this is a title you can find on Steam without having to resort to any kind of emulation or dig out an old console.
Hey.
We're going to talk about Tyranny. So, Tyranny is a CRPG. It was put out, I think, about 6 years ago now, by Obsidian, the guys who did Pillars of Eternity. If you're not familiar with CRPGs, the acronym just means Computer RPG, which is not that informative because there's a bunch of RPGs in the computer.
Exactly.
But it tends to refer to these classical pseudo-turn-based pausable games in the vein of the older Baldur's Gate, as well as some of the more recent Pathfinder titles they've done.
Oh, okay, cool. All right. Now, well, tell us what you like about the game. What's the appeal and draw for people who might be interested?
So there are some unique mechanics in Tyranny. There is this excellent art style. It feels very like hand brush painted or very mural-ish, so to speak. I think the biggest draw for me is the story. In Tyranny, you're basically playing one of the bad guys. You are a cog in the army of Kairos the Overlord, and you have to determine if you're going to be working your way up through the ranks as a loyal soldier, or if through making alliances with the people who would be conquered, you'll turn yourself into some kind of rebel. Are you going to ally with or supplant the tyrant's generals to make your way through this? Will you obey the conqueror's laws or try to enact your own edicts?
That's a pretty rare setting for gaming.
Yeah, it sets you up through a really interesting kind of opening segment as well. The character creation takes place in the opening stretch of the Conquering campaign, where you try to establish like what you've been doing along the run-up before you get full control over things. And this starts to demonstrate whether you're choosing for your character to be more ruthless, merciful, and things like that.
Interesting. Okay.
The second bit that I think is really fun in the game is just the magic system overall. You have this custom magic system where you are building up your own spells from various runes that you find in the game. You're kind of mixing and matching. You're like, is this going to be a line attack or a cone attack? What element is it going to use? This does fire damage, but I really want it to freeze people, so we've got a combination that does that. And you kind of develop your character's spells through various different attributes, and the character creation is open enough that even if you're a melee fighter or an archer, you can still splice magic onto that, and it handles each of the kind of spell schools as their own skill tree.
Interesting. Okay. That is a very unique concept. I gotta say, I can't remember the last time you were the bad guy. You know you're the bad guy, and you got the choice between, you know, fixing the status quo or maintaining it as a core story element. You know, there's always a, hey, you were secretly the bad guys. Well, I guess we're automatically going to change. No, but actually being able to decide between them and seeing where that goes, that's actually pretty interesting. I might have to pick that one up.
I think in a lot of cases you wind up choosing instead between, chaos or law along the way. Like, are you the ruthless conqueror? Do you slaughter everybody? Your position within the army is the Fate Binder, which is essentially one of the. It's like a marshal underneath the underneath like the high judge, so to speak.
Interesting. Okay. Well, let me ask you something. You said this game came out about 6 years ago, right?
I think that is about right for timing, but everything feels like it takes too long nowadays.
Yeah.
I looked this up in an article the other week, but I can't remember if I'm quoting it correctly.
No, that's fine. Well, let me ask you this. Let's say this game gets a sequel. What are some things you would like to see in it or see changed in it, or both?
So, I think that more other games, the CRPG format of the real-time combat that you can pause, like under the hood, the combat is turn-based, but it doesn't actually play out in a turn-based function. I would really rather see Obsidian try and build something with a fully turn-based formula, because I think the way it executes right now is kind of difficult to parse if you're not accustomed to it, and it especially makes things frustrating to deal with on higher difficulties. Sometimes a combat can spiral out of control really quickly. And from the perspective of the story, I'd like to see something that's set, decently in the future or decently in the past. There are past civilizations that are hinted at in Tyranny that we don't necessarily explore.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you could take this setting in different ways or do different things with it. I think they chose this paradigm of you possibly rebelling against, possibly going along with Kairos, because it's an intriguing snapshot of time, but you could easily do something that is maybe 100 or 200 years after this empire, although Kairos, it appears, is an ancient, possibly immortal type of character, so perhaps in that far future you would be rebelling against the character you play in the first game.
Huh. Yeah, that actually is pretty enticing. Surprised you haven't tried to go for a writing degree. Definitely gonna look into that. Well, I suppose
setting up a premise is one hurdle. Writing an entire game is a lot more work than that.
Well, I mean, like writing a novel. I mean, a dungeon master already is capable of some heinous shit, but I feel like there's a secret level of just like interest in some form of literary work with people who get deep into D&D and stuff like that.
Maybe after I've tied up my current project, I've been running something that will be ending in 2024, about the middle of the year. Then I'll pivot to something else.
Yeah, I mean, you got that LARP group. I mean, why not
Exactly.
take adventures from that and, see what it feels like or looks like in a novel format? Who knows? You may find a brand new career, not even realize you're good at it.
Huh. Yeah, I'll get some campaign setting books together, see what people think of the setting.
Exactly. Well, unlike our regular shows, when they end, it's kind of ambiguous or nebulous what the next episode may be about. However, depending on how things go, I'm going to continue for the first time ever, letting the audience know what we're going to be looking into next time. And for us, or rather for this channel, the next episode of Hidden Gems is going to be about Duel Saga 2. Now, I know what you're thinking. 2? I never even heard of 1. I assure you, even if you never played the first game and you didn't realize the second game or the sequel had a name change, most people who enjoy the concept of action in RPG are going to find something to like about Duel Saga 2. Alright, Jupiter, you want to tell everybody where they can find you?
Yep. You can find me either over on Twitch at twitch.tv/JupiterExile or on YouTube at YouTube.com/@ at Jupiter Exile YT. I'm also on Threads now, on like however Threads organizes its handles. You could search up Jupiter Exile and find me.